we certainly had a interesting ending to this week's professional wrestling escapades. What's going on, everybody? Travis Fowler Harkrider back again with another edition of Tights and Turnbuckles. So let's just jump right into our weekly high spots. Starting off with Monday Night Raw, this was the third and final promo interaction between John Cena and Cody Rhodes. And I said it last week that it felt like these promos were just basically wash, rinse, repeat. There wasn't really any substance to them that really intrigued me, and I don't think anybody else felt too much different also. Well, they must have heard some criticisms because this past week they came out with guns blazing with several different lines, from adult risque lines to inside jabs to Cody's AEW time, as well as Cena's choice to have been Vince McMahon's puppet essentially, and had been used as the number one guy for the past almost 20 some odd years. So there was a lot that was in that promo, and it was very well done from both. I actually enjoyed Cody getting the one up on Cena, hitting the crossroads to end the segment. This is just making their match actually that much more intriguing in just a couple short weeks here at Mania. I think they did good to kill this promo on the go home edition of the two of them having their back and forth. So I look forward to seeing what they do with the last 2 weeks of Mania right around the corner here. We've got Monday Night Raw tomorrow night as we're recording this on Sunday. And it's going to be interesting to see how WWE caps off this last stretch of the road to WrestleMania. Speaking of WrestleMania, one of the more lackluster matches has to involve Jey Uso, unfortunately. And him and Gunter's rivalry, while it hasn't been absolutely downright horrible in my opinion, a lot of people have just kind of pointed towards Jey maybe not being exactly ready for this main event level push. And I don't think that's the case. I do think the story overall has been a little lacking, but this week they had the violence turned up a notch with Gunter going out and absolutely destroying Jimmy Uso. I did think Jey watching from the corner was a little cheesy, especially at one point when I'm like, well, he's trying to reach for him, which he was. He was trying to reach for him, but he was still enough distance away where he could have kicked him. And I think that's where the believability was really starting to falter for me. And no offense to Jey's acting ability, well, actually it kind of is. I wasn't really convinced that this is something he was die hard trying to get to stop. You know, at one point you could see him pulling. At another point you could kind of see him like, come on, man, stuff like that. It just, overall, I don't think it was that convincing as being like a, oh my God, my brother's getting murdered right in front of me spot. But, that's kind of just been the way of this feud, and I'm hoping the Mania match ends up being good. I think Gunter's going to carry the load of that match, but don't get me wrong, I think Jey is very deserving of his spot. It's just this feud hasn't been what most people would have hoped for going into WrestleMania season. Over still on the Raw side, we had it made official. Logan Paul versus AJ Styles one-on-one. It's still going to be a great match. Despite what anybody may feel about Logan Paul, the dude delivers. He really does. And his WrestleMania resume is actually pretty fire already. I was there to watch his debut match, which was at WrestleMania 38 in Dallas. He killed it then. Then he came back the following year at 39 with a one-on-one match with Seth Rollins. Killed it there. We saw last year at 40 a good triple threat with him, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens, which, thinking of it now, man, that whole situation with Kevin Owens, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, is so gut-wrenching because you could have easily played in the WrestleMania match from last year into this match that was coming up here in a couple of weeks. And now we have him set against AJ Styles, which we know how AJ works. We know how Logan Paul works. I really think this is going to be quite a show-stealing performance for both guys. This match is going to be genuinely fun to watch. I honestly can't wait to see it. And then the ending to Raw was the World Heavyweight title women's match between Rhea Ripley and Io Sky. I said it last week, and most people predicted it going forward, that there was going to be some kind of chicanery that would prevent it from being a one-on-one match, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Bianca Belair as the special referee really didn't do much different than what I expected. I think I even said last week it would be maybe some form of a disqualification that would still halt this from being a one-on-one affair. So I expect here tomorrow night on Raw, if not sometime the week after, which I don't see how you couldn't at that point. But I'm pretty confident to say that tomorrow night we're going to hear the announcement of the three-way match made official: Io Sky, Bianca Belair, and Rhea Ripley. As I've stated numerous times, I would have preferred it to be just Rhea and Bianca, but it is what it is. This is what we're getting. Io Sky is going into her second Mania as a champion. It will be interesting to see if she walks out still the Women's World Champion, but I think the safe money would be one of the challengers. Either way, it is going to be an interesting story between those three as to who walks out of Las Vegas with that Women's World title. Then over on NXT, speaking of women's divisions, I felt like this was really weird for them to do, but Stephanie Vaquer came out to start the show and relinquished the Women's North American Championship after making such a big deal of her being the first to hold two active singles championships on the women's side and successfully defend them. The very next week, she's relinquishing the Women's North American title. I really wish they would have continued on with her defending both titles at least for a little while, just to really cement home how important and how big of a thing this was. But it is what it is. This is what we've got. And I guess all of that pomp and pageantry over it, we really only had to deal with it for a week, because now we have to crown a new Women's North American Champion, which we've started that process, and it will be finished up at Stand and Deliver in a ladder match for the women. And on top of that, two women have already qualified for it, that being Kalani Jordan and Zarya, your first two people in that Women's North American title ladder match. We will have the next 2 weeks to find out who will round out that ladder match field, because it does look to be 6 participants as a whole. I expect Sol Ruca to be in there too, and I think it's her time to capture some form of a championship, and I think that'll eventually lead to her and Zarya going their separate ways, because this team's been kind of fun, but I really would prefer both of them to just be still on their own. Also now on NXT, Dark State, which is the name of this Shield ripoff, actually attacked the announced triple threat main event for Stand and Deliver's NXT Championship match. That's right, Obafemi, Javon Evans, and Trick Williams all were attacked by Dark State, which kind of takes away from where I was saying that maybe Dark State and Trick Williams have a thing together. Maybe that's not the case after all, because this upcoming week it's been announced that there will be a 6-man tag involving that main event of Stand and Deliver against the 3 members that they choose of Dark State. So that's been announced. Whether or not that comes to anything with maybe Trick still being involved, we'll have to wait and see, but maybe I was wrong in that regard as to how they're going to play this whole Dark State thing out. But moving forward, Ricky Saints, in a very short time, they were saying it even on commentary, if he had won the match, he would have won an NXT championship faster than Ethan Page, and that's exactly what ended up happening, as Ricky Saints hit Rochambeau to end the match with Shawn Spears and become the new men's North American champion, only for him to be attacked by all ego Ethan Page right after the match, seemingly setting up their title match for Stand and Deliver. Ethan Page has been quite the busy person, as we'll talk about here in just a moment. But moving now to Smackdown, we saw so much go on there that was worthy of being talked about. Some for the good, some for the bad, and some for the But to start off, Rey Fenix debuting in Chicago to a tremendous ovation. The entrance looks very similar to his brother. The logos that they have created for both Penta and Rey Fenix are also very similar. I actually love that, and eventually when they do team them up, I think it'll be a really cool combined logo for both guys. And he fared very well and came out with the W against Nathan Frazer, who had a good showing of his one-on-one ability. I think it's only a matter of time before we see Fraxium as a team come up to the main roster. Maybe they do a split in NXT. Only time will tell if that'll be how that ends up rounding out, but great showing from both guys. Rey Fenix getting the same treatment that his brother got just a couple months ago when he debuted in the WWE. Both Lucha Brothers are now in WWE, and it's an exciting time for both men. Looking forward to what they do with Fenix here in the coming weeks. Obviously, we know Penta looks to be in the Intercontinental title picture and subsequent match coming up at Mania, so Great things for both guys. Happy to see for both of them succeeding already in WWE. Then we had the Motor City Machine Guns along with Jacob Fatu, not in the same match, but both of those two aforementioned people, or I should say one tag team and one singular individual, are moving on for championship matches. Jacob Fatu winning his last man standing match with Braun Strowman to become the number one contender to LA Knight and the US title, while the Motor City Machine Guns picked up a win and became the number one contenders for the tag team titles against the Street Profits. Really will be interesting to see if they save that match for Mania or if that's going to be on one of these episodes of Smackdown for the go-home coming into Mania. Will it be this week or will it be the week after? Will we even see the tag titles on the Mania card? Because right now, it's looking pretty scarce for actually both tag team titles as New Day and War Raiders are having their issues as well. So only time will tell if we see any kind of tag team title representation on WrestleMania. Then, over on SmackDown still, we saw Naomi and Jade Cargill finally mix it up with each other and they made the match official. It's going to be Jade Cargill taking on Naomi. I really love what they're doing with Naomi's heel run thus far. She's got a great promo and look already. Jade Cargill's looking like she's ready to tear someone apart. So this feud's going well. I look forward to the subsequent match here at Mania as I think it's going to be a fun watch for both these women to really show out and shine on the biggest stage in WWE. Then we got to talk about the announcement from Kevin Owens, who unfortunately looks to be out of action for an undisclosed amount of time due to a neck injury. And we'll talk a little bit more about this and the ramifications that are coming from it, but unfortunately, we're not going to see KO for quite a while as it looks like just the amount of injuries and his in-ring style has finally caught up to him. I wish nothing but the best for him, and again, we'll talk more about where that leaves Randy Orton for WrestleMania in just a moment. But KO, hope for a speedy recovery and to see you back in that ring sometime soon. If this is not going to be a continuation of his career and this indeed is the end, thank you very much for the memories because we appreciate every bit of what you have put through your body through over the last 20 some odd years. And I can honestly say it was great to watch you live against Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 38 in Dallas. Great matchup, great promo between the both of you guys, and I'm glad you got to fulfill that childhood dream for yourself. Now let's talk about the two other segments on the show. The first awkward one, Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair, which has been making news all around. Was it worked? Was it shoot? Was it mixed? You can tell that it got to a point where it wasn't worked anymore and that we were starting to take low shots. People have been chastising Tiffany Stratton for taking the low road about Charlotte's personal life. Yet Charlotte has done something similar in the past, not just to Stratton, but in general, and we also remember the awkward belt exchange with her and Becky a few years back. This just kind of seems to happen with Charlotte every once in a while. Seemingly gets on a good rivalry, if you will, and then some kind of drama usually takes place. I understand where people are coming from saying that Stratton took a low road talking about her personal life after she had just come out earlier in the week and talked about her struggle through this third divorce from Andrade. And I kind of understand where people are coming from that maybe she should have left it alone, but in the same breath, this is also professional wrestling, and sometimes that low-hanging fruit can create a better, I guess, rivalry on screen. If anything, though, it may have just caused animosity between the two of them backstage. Hopefully both can remain professional, and while I agree that this WrestleMania build hasn't been the best for either woman, I do have to say that I still look forward to the match, and I'm thinking it's still going to be a show-stealing match. Hopefully they can put any personal stuff aside and turn out a banger for WrestleMania. And then finally, we got to find out what the favor was from CM Punk. And we'll talk more about this in just a moment, but as it turns out, it looks like his favor was simply for Paul Heyman to be in his corner at WrestleMania as opposed to the Tribal Chief, to which it looks like Heyman has agreed, as he did say, whatever the favor is, yes to it earlier in the night. and he couldn't turn it down when Roman asked him, hey, tell him no. He didn't do it. So it's looking like Paul Heyman is going to be in CM Punk's corner come the triple threat match with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. That does make the match a little bit more intriguing. Of course, I have not hid my feelings on how I still think this is kind of ridiculous with nothing on the line in this triple threat. So I guess we'll just see how this plays out. Maybe this is going to lead to something good for the winner of the match, but I don't know. I'm not fully invested in the match. I do think it has some intrigue to it, but as a main event for Mania, I think it still kind of falls short. But that's just my opinion. I'm still happy that Punk is getting his main event for WrestleMania, and who knows, maybe this match ends up being absolutely amazing for all three guys, and I eat my words on it. I still think it is going to be a good match. It's just not what I would have booked for Mania personally. But did CM Punk's favor underwhelm you? Because I know it kind of did me. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Let's get to the AEW side because AEW Dynasty is tonight, and I honestly can't say that I'm too thrilled about it. There's a few matches that maybe are pretty good. I actually do think the Swerve Mox match is going to be fun. They had their last little build-up this past week on Dynamite, which led to an interaction, a very interesting one, between Hangman and Swerve, where they talked about what they had done to each other, from Swerve breaking into Hangman's home to Hangman going and burning down Swerve's house. And it was that moment where it was Hangman who said, "You deserved what I did," and Swerve said, "I know." And after that, Hangman had that look on his face like, you acknowledged that you did something wrong and you're admitting to it. Maybe that was all the validation Hangman needed to let this issue go. Does he potentially help Swerve out tonight and capture the AEW championship? We shall see where this goes. It's another interesting turn in Hangman Page Swerve Strickland's rivalry here with AEW. Great move by AEW nonetheless. Also, over on Dynamite, Lashley still does not want MJF as part of the Hurt Syndicate, and honestly, I don't either. But this is an interesting story that they're doing with MJF, playing off of his history with MVP. It should be a rather interesting turn for when MJF either does indeed become a part of the Hurt Syndicate, or will he eventually get destroyed by the Syndicate. I'm thinking more of the latter, and it's just a matter of when, not if, in my opinion. Finally, the note that I want to make is Megan Bayne looking like a freaking star. Even Bully Ray was saying that while she may be, in his words, green when it comes to TV, she is still a knockout when it comes to being a aura, having a presence on AEW's TV. And even he thinks maybe they should pull the trigger and put the title on Bayne tonight at Dynasty. It will be interesting to see what they do and how she performs against Toni Storm, who's a proven commodity. So Dynasty does look interesting in some spots. There are others that I don't think are as good, but you know what? Maybe Dynasty will end up being a very fun pay-per-view overall. I'll get to watch it tomorrow, but for tonight, I think I'm going to go with Swerve capturing the AEW title, and yeah, I'm kind of with Bully. Let's just roll the dice and see what happens. Let's put the title on Megan Bayne and see what she does. Also, I want to point out over on Collision, as we will see tonight, will Rated FTR be able to keep themselves together against the Death Riders? Because we've seen where Dax Harwood has admitted to having issues. Cash wasn't exactly sure if they can get past it by saying, let's talk later. Over on Dynamite, and then on Collision, Cash Wheeler was in a one-on-one situation where it broke down to a point where the Death Riders and Rated FTR got involved, and, well, Dax again kind of letting some emotions get the better of him, but Cash Wheeler and Cope came and actually gave him a little bit of a hand up, literally, to say, hey, it's cool, let's regroup, and let's take these trios titles tonight at Dynasty. Will that be the case? I don't think so. I think we are witnessing the implosion of at least Rated FTR, if not FTR itself. Also, with TNA, let's talk about some TNA stuff real fast. As I said, Ethan Page is making his rounds because he showed up on TNA And he admired what Frankie Kazarian was doing, as he is announcing, calling his shot is being cashed in against Joe Hendry at Rebellion. But it looks like Ethan Page had a little something to say as well, as it has now been made a triple threat match. Joe Hendry defending the TNA title at Rebellion against both Frankie Kazarian and Ethan Page. Will Ethan Page walk out as a double champion from Rebellion and NXT Stand and Deliver as the North American champion and TNA champion? I don't think so. I'm leaning towards Kazarian taking that title from him and Joe Hendry, and I can see a rivalry being built between those two going into even Bound for Glory. So we'll see, but I think I have to say my bet would be on Frankie Kazarian walking out with the TNA championship. Also, TNA has officially retired the digital media title, and in its place will be the TNA International Championship. The tournament does begin and ends at the Unbreakable event, where they are going to have 3 triple threat matches in honor of the Unbreakable legendary match of Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, and Samoa Joe for the X Division title. The winners of those 3 triple threats will then face each other in the triple threat to determine the first international TNA champion, and that will be held at Unbreakable. So I cannot wait to see this title and what it looks like, because the TNA titles look absolutely gorgeous these days. Can't wait to see what they do with their version of an international title, as I think TNA is still on a great hot streak. With this partnership between them and NXT, it's definitely brought new eyeballs to TNA, and it's been for nothing but the better, I think, overall for TNA. But now, let's go into some of the wrestling news. Let's talk about KO's injury. There was a report that, according to PW Insider, was saying that Kevin Owens' injury would keep him out possibly years, 2 to 5 years. Now, as of this morning, Mike Johnson has come out and he has dispelled those rumors. That is not the case. He had never once reported that. And there still is necessarily no timetable for Kevin Owens' return. He is going to be out for a while. As to how long, it's only going to depend on how he heals from surgery and how recovery goes and potential rehab. So right now, we still don't know exactly when he'll return, but we can just hope for the best for Kevin Owens. But in the meantime, does that take Orton off of WrestleMania? It would suck to not have Randy Orton on the big show, especially after he had already been slated to face Kevin Owens. But now it makes you wonder, who would they have to fill that spot? Well, there are 3 people that I have in mind. One has already made the rounds, another is rumoredly the person they're going to throw in there, and then another one is the one that has interactions with him already. The 3 potential opponents that I would like to see take Owens' spot for Mania, Karrion Kross being one, not, by the way, no order necessarily of like who I want being at the top and who I want least at the bottom. But first, now that that's been said, Karrion Kross I think would be a great fulfillment, as his character is really underrated. And for those that have watched his progressions, I think Kross against Orton could be a great feud for him to really break through to that next level, and having a general like Orton to work with on the big stage may be exactly what he needs to propel himself to a new main event picture. The next name would be a returning Aleister Black. We have seen the promos over the last few weeks, the 4 and the 25, as it looked like he may be coming back on the Smackdown after Mania. But, things change, plans change. Why not throw him in at Mania and have him take on Randy Orton? They've had a one-on-one before, and it would be interesting to put the RKO up against Black Mass to see what could be hit first, because both are match enders. So that would be a fun one-on-one matchup between those two. And then finally, I say the most probably obvious choice, because it's now had 2 instances where he has RKO'd him, Nick Aldis putting on the boots and making a WWE debut at WrestleMania in the ring would be really fun, actually. We know that Nick can still go if you followed his career at all from TNA to his NWA title run. And he's had now 2 RKOs from Randy Orton, for which they did plug in a little bit of history with that I've seen online, of Orton paying what was a $50,000 fine, only he paid $100,000 and said, well, there's an extra 50 for the next one. And that was because he had RKO'd Nick Aldis the week prior when they had that interaction. So there is a bit of history there between Aldis and Orton, and I think that would be a fun Mania match as well. So if you're going to look for a replacement for Kevin Owens, those would be my three choices. One of those three men would be a perfect spot filler for Orton's Mania matchup. Finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about. Will Ospreay did an interview just recently where he talked about some of the differences between AEW and the rest of professional wrestling, and then specifically he mentioned the cage match that him and Kyle Fletcher had, and he compared it to Rollins and Punk's match just a couple days, or even I think the next day after that match. So first, I'll talk about AEW as a whole, because he brought up how AEW is 90% wrestling and 10% acting, if you will, is about the only way I can put it. Maybe even say sports entertainment. And that's the way their brand of wrestling is. And honestly, he's not wrong. When you look at AEW as a whole, that is exactly how they present their form of wrestling. It's a very, as I've called it, Japanese-esque style of promoting, because that's what New Japan does. That's, I think, even what All Japan and Noah do. The thing about that is they've had a few companies try that approach before, and it's never been fruitful in the long term for that company. Now, as news reports came out this week that the Max streamer is getting about 500,000 views of AEW through Dynamite and Collision Plus, but this was mainly regarding Dynamite. Let me go ahead and note that. And then on top of the 500,000 viewers that watch on the weekly show on TBS, that gave them somewhere between a grand total, they said, reporting of 1 to 1.2 million viewers. So that's great for AEW overall. I know I watch it on the Max service now, and it's great and convenient for me to do so. So maybe those numbers aren't fudged. And if that's the case, great. I'm glad that they're having the success that they are having. But I still don't know if the long run it'll work, but I do know that as of this moment, having AEW as an alternative has been nothing but great for professional wrestling. And that's where my next issue comes in, because then Ospreay comparing his match with Kyle Fletcher, saying it's way better, and saying that Punk and Rollins match the very next night, we're going to say, was not as up to speed, I think is actually a horrible misnomer, because honestly, they're two different things. They are two different types of cage matches. Ospreay's and Fletcher's was a blood feud that was just straight violent at times, whereas Punk and Rollins' blood feud cage match was more methodical. You didn't need the weapons. They went more for storytelling. And that's the two differences between AEW and WWE that honestly is not a bad thing, because variety just makes professional wrestling that much better. But his way of thinking, saying that his was better than theirs, in my opinion, is what's wrong with some of the tribalism today. When you have a big star who's not just promoting his company, but then demeaning his competition, I think it's hard to really take what you're saying seriously, because you should just be encouraging professional wrestling overall. And I know that people would say, well, he's just being competitive. It's the competition of those two companies. And maybe so. But sometimes I don't think you need to lean into it as heavily, especially with the IWC being as volatile and destructive as it is on its own. Doing things like that really doesn't help in that tribalism. It, to me, just escalates it, which I think is stupid. That's just my opinion. I'm glad that he is AEW through and through, but maybe scale back your little bit of biasness towards AEW and maybe just talk about the good of the match as opposed to trying to compare it to something you felt was less than. Just my opinion. But moving from that, we'll wrap it up with AEW Dynasty. It should be a fun show. There's several different matches that have been announced, from, like we said, the AEW title match, both for the women's and the men's. The ROH titles on the line. It kicks off the Owen Hart men's and women's tournament tonight. In the men's side of the bracket, we have Will Ospreay, Kevin Knight, Brody King, Konosuke Takeshita, Mark Briscoe, Kyle Fletcher, Hangman Adam Page, and a wild card. How much you would have bet that that wild card is going to be filled by Josh Alexander? I'm calling it now, and I'm going to stick with that until proven otherwise. On the women's side, you've got Jamie Hayter, Billy Starks, Thunder Rosa, Chris Statlander, Julia Hart, Mercedes Moné, Harley Cameron, and Athena. I'm pretty sure this is where we're going to get the Moné-Athena match, and I wish it wouldn't be in the tournament because I'd rather see a double title match, but I think that'll be fun overall. out of both tournaments, I really don't know who I'm going to pick as a winner just yet. My safe money would say Monet's going to take it for the women and Ospreay for the men, but anything can happen in this road to All In Texas for AEW. But I look forward to seeing what they pull off tonight with Dynasty. And now I'm going to pass everything off to you guys. Are you looking forward to AEW Dynasty? Or if you're already someone like me who hasn't watched it yet but is going to today on Monday, what did you think of the show? Did you enjoy AEW Dynasty? Let me know in those comments below. Did you have an issue with the Tiffany Stratton Charlotte Flair promo from Smackdown? Do you like Paul Heyman being in the corner of Punk, or was it a very underwhelming favor as I think it was? I think there was a little bit more that could have been done, but this is what we get. Let me know in those comments down below, and anything else you want to talk about in professional wrestling, put it in that comment section. I love talking wrestling with you guys, and I hope you are following us on all of our socials. If you're new to this channel, I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard today on today's episode. Follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel here. I will come back next week with another edition of TNT. Until that time, y'all enjoy your week ahead, and also make sure you continue to love pro wrestling.